Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters from all across the globe. Thank you so much for watching us here again and in our studio of Jannatul Ma'wa. We come up with another episode of your program, Ramadan Talks with Sayyid. And here we are with my friend and my brother, dear Sheikh Ali. Assalamu alaikum, dear Sheikhuna.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you so much for being here and doing this with me.
Thanks for your invite.
And Ramadan Mubarak, by the way.
Ramadan
I haven't
Kareem.
seen you in a while, so I just wanted to do all the greetings in the beginning. So, dear Sheikhuna, as we reach to the final week of the month of Ramadan, and one particular occasion, appears, and that is the Yawm al-Quds, Yawm al-Quds al-Alami, as they say, or the Quds Day. So I remember, I just read in the history that Imam Khomeini, one of the first things that he has done in the beginning of the Islamic Revolution was to designating this last day, the last Friday day in the month of Ramadan, as the Quds Day. What was the reason behind it, and why still commemorating this day and participating in Quds rally is important and significant?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Well, thank you for a very loaded question. And when it comes to Al-Quds Day and the significance of Palestine, I think as the time passes by, we see that the awareness about Palestine and the issue of Palestine and the usurpation of Masjid Al-Aqsa and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, it becomes more evident, it becomes more clear, and it becomes more pressing and important for the people of the world. Mm-hmm. So alhamdulillah, the basira of Imam Khomeini, the foresight of Imam Khomeini, Rizwanullah ta'ala alayh, and his vision back in the day, somebody living in a place like Iran, usually in a smaller cities, even within Iran, and going to madrasa and hawza, somebody to have that level of foresight, this enough in itself is very miraculous, right? This is a special gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we look at the verses of the Holy Quran, and they say that if you achieve taqwa and if you implement taqwa in your life, Allah gives you furqan, Allah gives you basira, Allah gives you that insight, foresight, where you could see through the realities of things. And this is what our urafa and the mystics, the Islamic Gnostics, as they say sometimes, the urafa, this is how they understand the realities of the world and what is beyond the world through achieving that taqwa.
And it was interesting for me because back then in those days we've got other Muslim oppressed in different parts of the world, like in Africa or East South of Asia, but particularly Imam Khomeini put this region, this problem, this issue in the spotlight. Right. And I think now we can understand that what was the reason behind it. Right.
Like I said, these are the divine guidance, if you would. And why is it significant? Why is it important? And especially in the month of Ramadan and the blessed and the holy month of Ramadan is a question that actually bothers a lot of people or makes them curious, to say the least, right? I remember growing up, when we had to go to Al-Quds Day, while you're fasting and it's, scorching heat outside and, you're just not feeling, having the energy to go outside was difficult.
You could have chosen another day.
So you're like, Imam Khomeini, the entire month of Ramadan, we've been, fasting, staying hungry, and why this day, right? And as I grew, and as I started to research, and as I started to look at the other decisions Imam Khomeini had to make during his lifetime, his blessed lifetime, it made more sense to me that there was a divine hand behind this announcement on the last Friday of Mahi Ramadan and the month of Ramadan, where Imam Khomeini said, Al-Quds Day, you come out for oppressed, this is the day that you show your anger and express your displeasure against the oppressors and be with thee, and a help for the support for the oppressed. So, these are the things that we need to understand. The purpose, really, one of the dimensions that comes to my mind to answer your question is the same purpose that the Quran, the Holy Quran, has mentioned about the month of Ramadan. What is the purpose of the month of Ramadan? Allah
Taqwa.
subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ
Tattaqun.
تَتَّقُونَ, right? So that you may achieve taqwa, right? So the entire pursuit, the entire exercise, the entire struggle, the entire effort in the holy month of Ramadan, everything we do, from our du'as and prayers to, the layali qadr and, the nights of qadr and so on and so forth. Everything is forced so that we can achieve that taqwa, right? Imam Khomeini, Ridwanullah Ta'ala, announcing Al-Quds Day on the last Friday of the month of Ramadan is in the pursuit of that same goal. Now, if I were to attach it and connect it with one of the greater sins that has been mentioned by Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi in his book, The Greater Sins, he says, not helping the oppressed is a greater sin.
Because I was thinking that taqwa is somehow associated with like individual sort of activities and sin that we commit.
Generally, that's how people think about it, right? But when you look at the dimensions of taqwa and the dimensions of sin, it is far greater than just individual capacity and confinements. So Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi says, not helping the oppressed is a greater sin. So now let me ask you a question. MashaAllah, you're qualified, you're educated, you went to Hawza, you studied. It's a very simple question, right? If you are repeating a greater sin every second of your life, knowingly, intentionally, is there any way that you can achieve taqwa?
Yeah, I think there is no room for taqwa.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you are knowingly, consistently, repeatedly repeating that greater sin every second of your life, every moment of your life, consciously and knowingly, right? Because the basic of taqwa is performing your wajibat and avoiding the muharramat.
So I'm assuming that all the Muslim, in Muslim communities should ask the question of themselves that are we going to help Palestinian or not?
Exactly, because they are the ones who are oppressed, and I don't think that there is anyone who can doubt this notion that the Palestinians have been oppressed for 75 plus years.
No.
It's not just a recent phenomenon, right?
No.
So this means somebody who has seen the genocide, live genocide at the hands of the criminal, genocidal, baby killer, Zionist regime of Israel, the illegal, the illegitimate Zionist regime of Israel, how can they stay silent against these oppressions and these killings and these displacements and these, butchering of the children and the women and the. So it's part of your taqwa to do what?
Help the others.
Help and support the oppressed. And similarly, another gunah-e-kabira, as we say, the greater sin that Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi mentions in the book Greater Sin, in the light of course, the verses of Quran and Ahadith, is not opposing the oppressor.
Sure.
This is again a divine obligation that as an individual, as a society, as a community, as an ummah, as a human being, it is wajib upon us to oppose the oppressor. So now you take it to the hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Kuna lizalimi khasman wa lil mazlumi awna. Right? Imam Ali alayhi salam in his wasiyah, he says very clearly to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam that you have to be the supporter and the awn and the helper of the oppressed, and you have to be a khasm and a dushman and an enemy of the oppressor. Right? So open, wazih, clear.
Yeah.
This is something Imam Ali alayhi salam is not leaving any room for anyone.
So you have to draw these lines very clearly between the Islamic line and the enemy line, that you're not going to be with them.
Exactly.
Whatsoever.
And you have to express that enmity towards the enemies. You can't just, I am indifferent about it. I'm not with them.
Yeah.
Because staying neutral, practically speaking, is not an option. Even in Karbala, after Karbala, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and Imam Bakr alayhi salam, they tell us what? That those who stayed silent at that oppression and let the oppression of Karbala happen, they're amongst who? The oppressors. Because effectively, they are the participant in the crime by staying silent.
Yeah.
Because if they could have stepped forward, they could have stopped the oppressor, things could have been different, right?
Yeah.
So this makes them part and parcel of that whole camp, right?
Sure.
So you cannot be indifferent either, right? This means there is no other option but to be enemy of the oppressors. And there's no other option but to be the supporter and the helper of the oppressed.
One of the other reasons that comes to my mind about why Imam Khomeini Rizwanullah Ta'ala alayhi have chosen this particular day to be marked as the Quds Day within the months of Ramadan is that the month of Ramadan has this potential that people gather from different sects because we all do fasting. We do prayers and supplications, and we wanted to help and raise money for people who are imprisoned, or we just want to help other people. It has its own, it's like a divine sort of plan to make Muslim people united, despite all the differences they might have, all the different
just
cultures.
Like Hajj.
Just like Hajj, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a great potential, it's a great opportunity, so that we can use it.
Yes, and like Jumatul Wida, which is the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, it enough in itself has a very strong significance, which if we had time, we would expand on the significance of this last Friday, you know, and the a'mal that have been prescribed for this last Friday, and the ahadith and the narrations that have come in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam regarding this last Friday of my Ramadan. So this day, enough in itself, holds a very special spiritual value enough in itself, And if you, going back to your point, where all the Muslims, as combined, one hand, one fist, they are united. Look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took them through Rajab, Sha'ban, and Ramadan. Now they've reached the peak of their spirituality. After all those a'mal, all those ibadat, all those prayers, all that fasting, all that refraining from haram, all that performing wajibat, and also performing mustahabbat, and
the heart's already
charity, and everything. We try to be nice to each other in the nicer rather. All of that is in place, and now the ummah at large, they have gotten to this summit, this peak.
You can use it for one particular direction.
Yes, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through, of course, Quran and Hadith, and Imam Khomeini, in the light of those Quran and Hadith, command us to come out.
Let's use this energy.
Use this energy. Use what you have built, this spiritual capacity that you have increased in yourself and at a communal level, in the community, in the society, against what? The Taghut. Against the aggressors, against the oppressors, against the tyrants, against these wrongdoers, against these evildoers, against these evil worshippers. Right? Use all that energy, use all that spirituality. That spirituality was not supposed to be just a potential energy in you.
Sure.
It needs to be a kinetic energy, which needs to show itself. Right? And this again goes back to the Holy Quran, وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Right? You have to rise up and stand up against Taghut and the oppressors and the aggressors. And for that, all of the self-building, and I often say in my speeches and in my presentations, all of the self-building, there's a purpose behind it. And the purpose is bigger than for you to just go to heaven, and go to heaven and, not go to hell, and have a higher status in heaven. Yes, it's there. But the purpose of this self-building, this self-purification, is much higher than just going into heaven. Right?
So what's the purpose?
One of the purposes that we are suggesting here is so you can do the uprising against the enemies of Allah, the enemies of humanity, those who are trampling over the resources of other nations, other countries, those who are occupying other people, those who are doing genocide in daylight, right? Those who are tyrannical to bone, right? You do uprising against them. You overthrow their rule. You break those shackles, They're enslaving you. You go against them. This is one of the dimensions that we need to consider when we talk about self-building and achieving taqwa, which is again
to the list that you just mentioned. We can add, recently the Jeffrey Epstein's, travel guest or within the island. Okay, thank you so much, dear Sheikhuna. So I remember during the last 70 years, we have different occasions that people and countries, they wanted to come up with a peace treaty, or they, in some cases, they think that if you don't bother or somehow put the all the conflict aside, it would it would, you know, solve and resolve for its own. And in some cases, they would think that probably we have to, you know, come with an agreement or something like that. But the incident of the last 2-3 years, I think they prove us that Imam Khomeini was right about something, that this issue should be dealt with strengths, probably.
Well, not just strength. Yes, of course, strength is one element. We have to understand the nature of the very Zionist regime, right? When it comes into being and when it is conceived, what is the philosophy behind its conception? What is the legality of the conception of this illegal Zionist regime? You know, it is an occupation to begin with. You know, and this is something, especially the younger ones, the newer generation, they tend to forget because, you know, it's a 75-year-old matter, right? So, and the mainstream media never brings up those realities and facts which are documented and they're available online, and, you know, everybody knows there are books written about it and everything. The very inception of this cancerous tumor, the Zionist regime of Israel, it is illegal and illegitimate from day one. Now, what is the solution of an occupation? The only solution of any occupation is freedom. We saw in South Africa, right? You have to liberate that land, that piece of land, the people, and let the people decide for themselves. Right? Now, you can come up with like all kinds of random hypothetical solutions, right? Sitting, you know, outside of the peripheries of the conflict, you're just looking at it from far away and you go like, you know, I think this is how it should be solved. My first question to you would be, who are you to solve it? It is for the local people to decide how it needs to be solved.
That's their right.
You and me are no ones to come up with a solution of our own. And this is what Imam Sheikh Ali Qomi, the leader of the Muslim Ummah, the Wali al-Faqih, he says, and he keeps saying, you know, for decades I've been seeing him giving the solution that it is the Palestinians who have to decide the fate of their land. First, you know, let all the people who have been expelled from Palestine come back, you know, determine the future of their own country, right? The Zionist regime of Israel, it never existed. And for us, it still does not exist. We never accepted its legality, right? Now, this first point we have to keep in mind, the very origin of the Zionist regime. Then look at the trends. Since after it was conceived and, you know, illegally and illegitimately conceived, and it was kept protected by the Western superpowers in the region, you know, for their own ulterior motives, what has been the track record of the Zionist regime? Well, one thing, as we say, qadr mutayyakin, one thing that is for sure, and everybody agrees with it, is the expansionist policy of the Zionist regime.
Right now they're talking about it directly without, you know, any shame.
And they've been doing it practically, right, for 75 years, right? So the expansionist policy of
even against the UN
Zionist regime.
resolution.
Exactly. And I have written all of them. That's why I asked you before the discussion how serious you want to go about it. I have all the articles of the United Nations resolutions that they have passed. You can easily find it on Google as well. Now, the expansionist nature, the very nature of this cancerous tumor is expansionism, right? So how do you deal with an entity that is by, you know, sifat zati, I don't know how you translate that into
intrinsically you want it
intrinsic nature of that entity is to expand, right? How do you confine it? How do you control it, right? If I were to draw like a parallel based on what Imam Khomeini Ridwanullah Ta'ala alayhi had said, Ghudda Sartani, which is the cancerous tumor, ask the medical doctors, how do you control a tumor? You have to uproot it. You know, this is the solution, a permanent solution of any tumor. And inshallah, with this illegal, illegitimate Zionist regime of Israel, that is the solution. This tumor is going to be uprooted. Lastly, you know, to go and finish off this point with, you know, the peace deals and peace treaties and, you know, this accords and Abraham Accords and this accord. And all of these things have been done. All you need to do is just go and research. I'm not telling you, I'm telling the viewers, the young ones. Go and research. All of these attempts have been made. Right? So many treaties were written, so many, you know, deals were brokered, so many solutions were offered, and, you know, they were even signed. And the moment Israel signs it, the next moment it breaks it.
Yeah, Brexit.
Right?
And even go further to occupy more.
Exactly. They violate it and blatantly violate it, right? So they take it to the next level every single time. This has been the track record of the Zionist regime of Israel. So how can you talk about peace with this regime? Even now, they have officially, there's a peace plan or treaty going on between Lebanon and the Zionist regime. So Hezbollah from Lebanon and Zionist regime, and on this side from Palestine and Hamas and Zionist regime. And look, on everyday basis, the Western media is reporting it.
Yeah, attacking.
Everyday basis, the Zionist regime of Israel
more
is
than like, I think 7,000 times has been, this
violation. This means there's a total disregard, right? Whether it's 7,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 or 8,000, it really translates to a total disregard of any international treaties, of any sort of confinement that this Zionist regime is agreeing to.
I think someone should, have them accountable for what they're doing. I think we need that awareness among the national communities and, global, countries and nations to just deal with this problem. Okay, when it comes to the Quds rally, I come across youngsters these days. They wanted to do something about it. They wanted to help, and they know it is important, especially after what happened in October 7 and the genocide. And you see that so many youngsters from different countries and even continent. You see in the Western countries, you see the rallies. In the United States, university campus and so on and so forth. People are somehow awakened, and they just wanted to do something, help, because they feel that pain and ache within their conscious, and they don't know what to do. So if we want to give them this steering wheel to just use every potential that we can get, what do you suggest?
Well, first of all, I'm not in a position to suggest anything to anyone. I would recommend, first and foremost, look at the leader of the Muslim Ummah, Imam Ali Khomeini, right? He is the one who is supposed to be telling each one of us our duties, our responsibilities. That's part of his job responsibilities. He's supposed to give the direction, the overall direction, and the line on which we need to tread. So first and foremost, make sure that you know what the position and the stance of Imam Ali Khomeini is when it comes to the issue of Palestine itself, when it comes to the issue of Zionist regime of Israel and how it needs to be treated, the responsibility of the governments of the world, right? Let it be regional governments or the so-called superpowers. The responsibilities of the people of the world, let it be khawas and awam, the elites, those who are influential people, or ordinary people like myself, for example, without the libas, right? Because that puts us into a different category. So everybody's responsibilities have been laid out very clearly, and that is to go to Imam Khomeini, look at his speeches, read his speeches, search for the word Palestine, search for the word Al-Quds, search for, the Zionist regime, because he never uses the word Israel, on purpose, almost never. So search for it and see what he has said. So that's the first and foremost thing. You need to get this straight in your head. Do we agree with two-state solution or not, for example? How do you find out? Go to the source. Go to the one who is supposed to tell every single one of us in the light of Quran and Hadith and international law and humanity and so on and so forth, which is, in today's time and age, the deputy of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, Imam Ali Khomeini. So first recommendation is to go there. I've seen, since you asked the question for the youth, I've seen some effective work done on campus by many youth when it comes to the issue of Palestine. And many of those youth are, in fact, non-Muslims, right? So this is a kind of a reminder for the Shia youth and the Sunni youth, the Muslims youth overall, that you can be more effective. Try to find ways of being more effective on campus. Yes, you're going to get a pushback, like the student protesters in the United States of America, those who went to Ivy League schools, intelligent people, learned people, scholarly people, but they stood up for Palestine and they paid the price. You will end up paying the price too, but this is fine. The world is temporary.
Yeah.
We have to do our responsibility in this world, right? We're not going to be selfish and turn a blind eye towards a massacre. Babies are dying right, left, and center. So try to be effective on campus.
Sure.
Because students are the ones who have access to campus environment. Many of us, we don't anymore, right? Back in the day, we had it, and we did some activism. I don't like the term itself, but we did some activism back in the day on campus, right? Then another thing I've seen being effective is the BDS, right? So the boycott, divestment, and sanction, right? So this is something that we need to educate ourselves more about, and this is something.
Products that been used.
The products, and there are fatwa of Imam Khomeini and Ayatollah Sistani, Hafidhahullah, and all the maraji from Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi to different maraji that we have in today's time and age. They have all given fatwas against the use of products that benefit the Zionist regime of Israel, right? Let it be the financial, share of that or profit of that commodity going to the Zionist regime or to its benefit, or it is being produced there, for example, so on and so forth. So do your research and try to avoid, as a matter of fact, there are fatwas of it being haram to consume those, right? Yeah. I'm saying try to avoid only because sometimes, it's difficult to prove that a product, because they have made so complicated the whole
the chain system is
the chain, the product chain and whatnot. So that's why I said, even if you're not sure that a product is directly
an alternative, sure,
or indirectly supporting or helping the Zionist regime, even then avoid it, right? But if you know, then of course it's haram to consume that product, right? Similarly, when it comes to helping the Palestinians, I've seen good people doing good stuff, trying to take food or money or finances to the Palestinians through proper channels, through legal channels, through trustworthy channels, which is more important in today's time and age. So they've been doing that, which I think is very effective. Al-Quds Day, like you said, and then, throughout the year, one of the things, when I was in the States back in the day, we always felt that Al-Quds Day as one day is not enough anymore.
It's not enough, yeah, exactly.
Right? With all the crimes that the United States and at the behest of US and UK, the Zionist regime is doing against the oppressed Palestinians, we need to be more serious about it, right? So what we did is we tried to do multiple programs throughout the year, spread it out. So we did conferences, seminars. I remember one good program we did at a bigger scale, Let's Talk Palestine. We labeled it, Let's Talk Palestine. Then you can have poetry slams, the spoken words, then you can have art galleries for,
exactly. We need dramatic artistic work,
exactly,
in order to somehow raise people's emotion,
right. Make documentaries, make movies, make video clips, right? Spread awareness, empower and equip yourself, and then reach out to your own relatives. A lot of our own relatives, sometimes, we're very revolutionary. Our relatives, they have no idea, right?
Sure.
So I think it's our responsibility to try and educate them, bring them up to the speed, and have them join this caravan, right? There's so many other things that are coming to my mind, but it's going to be too exhaustive of a list.
MashaAllah.
If you keep going.
So how do you see the future of Palestine? Because back in the days, at the time of the genocide, you see that the massive, heinous crime has been placed there when the apartment and the heavy bombardment and basically so many part of the city, probably 80% of it or 90% of it have been leveled basically. And so some people would feel disappointment. Some people would say, "Oh, Palestine is a lost cause," and there is no hope that this city or the Palestinian people can save and find a way out of this truly tragic incident. So, how do you see that? What is the hopeful silver lining, sort of the bright side of this story for people? Because sometimes deep down we need a hopeful, I would say a ball to just hold onto it and then keep moving. Right. So how do you assess that?
I think overall, when you look at the entire issue of Palestine, it's very symbolic in today's time and age, right? Palestine symbolizes and signifies resistance against oppression at all levels, right? And this is a very strong message that the world needs to get from Palestinians. And despite the fact that they're giving and have given all these sacrifices, you don't see them, kneeling down in front of the enemy. This resistance, it's a very Quranic sabr. As Imam Khomeini explains, the entire concept of patience, which is wrongly understood in our minds, that patience is, the oppressor is doing oppression and you just stay silent about it. No. Yeah. Imam Khomeini says that the Quranic patience or Quranic sabr, this term, it means resistance, resilience, showing your strength, not giving in to bullying, not being intimidated, right? These are those concepts that the Palestinians today have taught the world. And this was the job of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. And they have been teaching us, the climax and the peak of it was Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. Right? They have been teaching us, right? In today's time and age, that legacy has been carried forward by the people of Palestine, the people of Lebanon, the people of Yemen, the great people of this nation, Iran, the Iranian martyrs, right? The resistance forces in the region, the Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, and Nujaba in Iraq. These are the people who have actually lived that legacy of Imam Hussein and the legacy of Karbala and the legacy of Khaybar and Khandak and Uhud, and they've actually retained it, and now they've revived it, they've showed it. So if you see these Palestinians, after giving all these sacrifices, they're reciting the verses of Quran on camera.
Yes.
Their buildings have been demolished, their dead bodies all over the place, and this 10 years old, 9 years old, 11 years old boy or girl standing in front of camera reciting the verses of Quran. I
have seen so many people reverted to Islam by just seeing the clip and footages, and
Imam Khomeini
want to know the secret.
Imam Khomeini in one place said that these shuhada and these mujahideen of Islam in Palestine and generally the Jabhat Muqawamat, the axis of resistance, the tabligh that they have done of Islam is more than any other form and format of tabligh. I'm paraphrasing. Right? And he gave us dalil. He said, after looking at their resilience, their commitment, their strength, people are forced to ask the question, what ideology do you believe in? What God do you believe in?
What is written in Quran?
Which book do you believe in? Who are you people? This is what Palestinians have done. They have actually proven the haqqaniyat and the truth of Islam. They have actually proven it with their own blood. And that blood is not going to go to waste. So number one, the first point we have to remember is that this resistance against oppression, resistance against oppressors, in itself is a victory. And I've done a full lecture at SOQ on this topic. The divine concept of victory is resisting against the oppressors, no matter what the outcome be. This in itself is victory, right?
Sure.
These Palestinians are victorious. These Hezbollah Mujahideen are victorious. These Hamas people are victorious. These men, women, children, who have their loved ones, they're already victorious. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And they have taught that lesson to the world. Now, what future we see for them? Because what they did was act on the verses of Quran and nothing more. Antakumu lillahi mathna wa furada.
Sure.
Right? Stand up and rise up for the sake of Allah, whether you are single or you are in pairs. Similarly, they've walked in real terms, materialized and manifested the commands of Allah in Quran.
True.
Now they have done their part. What does Allah do in return? In tansurullah yansurkum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum. That you help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means help the deen of Allah, help the movement of Allah, the divine movement of all the 124,000 prophets and 12 imams, the movement of wilayah, right? You help this deen of Allah, Allah in return helps you. Who is better helper than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Exactly.
So where does this whole disappointment come in from? Those who become disappointed, the problem is with their lack of iman. They don't have faith.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, those who have faith, in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْأَحْزَابَ قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ.
Yeah.
And what does it do in return? It increased them in their iman and taslim. The translation of the verse goes that when they saw that the confederates of the enemies and the groups of the enemies, they are attacking them, they have ganged up against them, the mu'mineen, what did they say? They said, this is exactly what the Prophet of Allah and Allah Himself had promised us. They had already told us that you stand up on the Sirat-e-Mustaqim, the enemies of Allah are going to come after you.
Sure.
So they're like, this actually certifies what we have already been told by Prophet.
True.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the verse continues, it says, what does it do to them? It increases them, وَزَادَهُمْ fi iman. In terms of their iman, in terms of their taslim and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is exactly what we are seeing. Right now, those who were weak-minded, weak-spirited, weak-faithed, if you would, they had the lack of faith, they are going to the sidelines. They are becoming disappointed.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no. And this is where,
because they do the math.
This is where there's a test, a divine test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at the history, right? Even some of the prophets of Allah, they said, Mata Nasrullah. When push comes to shove, things become difficult. Even some of the prophets, they end up asking the question, where is the help of Allah?
Yeah.
Right? But Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, today we are saying that Imam Sheikh Ali Qomi is standing tall.
True.
He is standing with firm belief. And he recites the verses of Qital and Jihad in today's time and age. He is the one who says, Innama ya Rabbi. Right? He repeats those verses of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with me.
Yeah, when you have God on your side, you don't fear.
You don't fear.
Yeah.
So I think it's all positive. And one of the things, and last point in this regard, one of the things that the enemies wanted, the enemies of humanity, the enemies of Palestinians, the enemies of Islam, the enemies of Muslims, the enemies of mu'mineen, what they wanted was to take this whole issue of Palestine into oblivion. So that everybody forgets about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They do their crime and nobody cares about it, and everybody is busy with their rat race and their dunya and everything. But look, the shuhada, the Palestinians, the wali faqih, the axis of resistance, it did not let it happen. Today, the entire world is forced to talk about Palestine. Whether they are black or white, whether they are gray or brown, everybody talks about Palestine.
Yeah.
And they're concerned about Palestine.
And when
this in itself is a huge thing.
When we see the capacity and the potential of the whole Islamic Ummah with the population of more than 1 billion people, with all the natural resources and the people and great communities and the cultures and the ghayra and the bravery of the Muslim people, you feel sorry that it reminds me of the story of Imam Khomeini when once he said that if all the Muslim people just, take one, in his term, like what would be the bucket of water, it would definitely wash out the whole problem of Israel and the Zionist regime. So again, I think we have to rely on our commonalities within the months of Ramadan, because we do have the power, we do have everything. Basically, we just need to be with each other and support each other, I guess.
Exactly. And unfortunately, those puppet governments of the region, let it be the government of Egypt, let it be the government of Jordan, let it be the government of Saudi, let it be the government of Turkey, even Qatar, and so on and so forth. You keep adding all these so-called Middle Eastern, West Asian countries, and you look at their management and their leaderships, right, or their people in power, if you would, they're all corrupt people. They're all the stooges of the West. They're all the servants of the superpowers, right? So what do you expect from them? They're sitting on all these resources. The hearts of the people of all these places, they're with Palestinians. The hearts of all these people of these places, they're against the United States of America, the head of the snake, the great Satan, right? The enemy of humanity, right? Their hearts are against the British and Britain, right? And they're in support of all this solidarity and standing up for the oppressed, no matter where they are, right? And what religion they come from. But the problem is that these politicians of these countries, the corrupt politicians, some of them are being, dragged into this Epstein case too that you referred to earlier, right? Mm-hmm. This is how they get blackmailed, and they don't open up their mouths, right? And there's a reason why they were brought into power to begin with by the West. And this is where the problem of the West is with the Islamic Republic of Iran, because
they're not in control.
Their stooge was taken out, that Raza Shah Pahlavi, right? He was taken out, right? He was replaced by the ones like Imam Khomeini, right? So of course the West is going to be angry.
Sure.
Right? And we were able to do it only in one country, right? And look at the havoc that it has created, right? Just imagine if all of these countries, the regional countries and the Muslim countries, promising. And this is where it is headed, sooner or later, inshallah, this is where it's headed, and this is what our job is, to make these people ready. Inshallah. Right? And take things to that level, inshallah.
Thank you so much, dear Shaykhana. I had a blast hearing you in this interview. Hope to have you in our future program as well.
Inshallah.
If there's any last word you want to offer.
Well, pray for the reappearance of Imam Zaman alayhi salam, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. Yes, we were discussing what's on ground at the moment, but we have to remember that we live in the time of Imam Sahib al-Zaman. He is the Imam of the Ummah. He is the Imam of the humanity. And he is the one who needs to be discussed, and we should pray for his return. And he's the one who is going to have that final fight against the oppressors of the world. As the Prophet of Allah, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Yamlahullah bihil arda adlan wa qista kama muliat zulman wa jawra." Right? That Imam Mahdi alayhi salam is going to fill the earth with justice, right, and equity, just the way it was filled with oppression and tyranny. So the ultimate solution is the reappearance of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. In the interim, before he decides to come back and before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally decides to send him back, we have a responsibility, and that is to pave the way for the reappearance of Imam Zaman alayhi salam. If we know Imam is going to fight oppression, we might as well fight the oppression. And this would make us the soldiers of Imam, the companions of Imam, whether we see him in our lifetimes or not, right? If we know that, Imam wants us to achieve that taqwa, stand up against the oppressors, just make a list of those things that Imam wants from us and start to execute them.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching us. I just want to be hopeful that one day we will be seeing the occupied lands of Palestine be freed, inshallah. So till another episode, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.